having AI be able to kind of infer, kind of make decisions, but apply that in a deterministic way. And so, moving as much of the kind of toil away from people working in the company, taking action on their behalf, but always having human in the loop, kind of the key decisions being made by humans. We were contributors to the EU AI. We want to make sure it does provide protection and that kind of, but balance with the ability to innovate and drive for business outcomes. I don't see AI replacing full jobs. It's replacing parts of jobs, and I think therefore the opportunity is how do we help those people do much more valuable work with that time that's freed up.
Hello everyone, it's Mark Kelly here, and I am chatting with Graham Abell, VP of Software Engineering and Site Lead at Workday, where they are leading a $175 million investment in their new AI Centre of Excellence, which will be in College Green soon to be. Graham, thank you very much for joining us on the podcast.
Thanks for having me, Mark. It's great to be here.
Graham, before we jump into the work you and the team are doing at Workday, tell us a little bit of an overview about your road to here.
I started coming out of college, went to Trinity, did computer science there. I think we were chatting earlier, kind of left at a point where there wasn't many jobs for grads, and so did a cycle of kind of interviewing, trying to get a job with no experience and not being able to get that job. So ended up moving to Edinburgh and taking a contract job in test automation essentially, and spent the first number of years of my career when I moved back kind of working in that space, kind of moving up to being the kind of tech lead for those types of teams, and then ultimately into leadership, which led me into leadership of development and product teams, and expanding that as I moved into Workday and taking on larger and larger parts of the business.
And when you initially went into Workday, you were working, was it more kind of engineering, software engineering kind of, or was it kind of direct, kind of a product role?
It's probably more of actually looking back on the dev side, leading kind of development teams. Product were sort of separate function that we kind of paired with. And then, as I said, I've been there nearly 10 years now, taking on kind of larger roles, taking on more of the span, and ultimately kind of running in a more kind of GM model, I suppose, running the product and engineering for what deploying technology is what I'm currently running.
I bet you in the role you have now, having the kind of your hands dirty in those different types of roles over the years probably gives you a good insight. Probably now you've got the acumen from the business side, but also you've got that technical chops too.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's good for being able to ask the questions and know when you're not fully told the truth, or when we're in those fire drills, when something goes wrong, being able to kind of try and rationalize where it's probably happening, what's the likely causes, because like any system, it's massively complex. There's all these interdependencies, and being able to kind of visualize kind of how the system's working and, identify where we've probably got challenges. It helps us manage the team when we're, in those crisis moments, or particularly now as we're looking into AI, kind of knowing what we should be building and how we should be building it, and making sure the architecture is correct to scale. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about the Dublin team, because people will be surprised the actual size of it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I was surprised when I joined. I didn't really, I'd heard of Workday, didn't really understand the kind of size they had, and we've grown a lot since then. So right now we're just over 2,200 people in Dublin, and another kind of interesting or differentiating factor is we're about 85% product and technology, so kind of R&D function, which for kind of US headquartered companies, quite an unusual blend in Dublin. So we've got about 1,800 kind of development, product, UX, etc., building core parts of our product, leading core parts of our product out of Dublin, it's incredible.
It's a pretty significant high investment to have in those roles, because you rightly said there's probably usually different types of kind of mix of what they would have. Is Ireland or Dublin specifically something that you've just kind of seen that you get really good talent here? Is it this kind of, has it been a kind of a key competitive advantage? Because you probably could have done this anywhere around the world.
Yeah, well, I guess it started with the acquisition of an Irish scale-up called Cape Clear, about 18-20 people at the time. So, 2 orders of magnitude growth in 15, 16 years. And I'm sure I think you've talked to some of the kind of progenitors of that, I'm sure. So it started off as a tech acquisition, essentially, right? And so that sort of set the seeds of what ultimately became this large oak tree that we have now in Smithfield and moving to College Green. So we were always really focused on the technology side and had like senior folks who became very senior leaders within Workday building that out. So I think, we had the technical capability, we had access to a great talent pool, both locally and through the universities that we have kind of long-standing partnerships with. Early talent's been massively important to us. And then obviously access to all our European folks as well. So we've over 70 nationalities working in Dublin. And so, I think that's been massively important to us as we are a global business, understanding global context, being able to build with kind of empathy for global constraints and kind of legislation and, cultural reference and all the rest of it. And then particularly I think as we're moving into this AI era, being able to really understand what the requirements, particularly in EMEA, are as the EU AI Act is coming in. Kind of have lived experience of all of that, and building the product to kind of meet that has been kind of key to our differentiation.
Yeah, it's so multifaceted and it's moving at kind of warp speed. What is Workday's AI vision?
Yeah, so I think like as we were kind of chatting earlier, like we run really important parts of very large businesses and medium sized businesses as well. But like it's their people, their finance, and their kind of business decisions. And so it can't be probabilistic. It has to be correct. We can't run payroll in a way that's going to be 99% correct. It has to be correct. And so we are really building towards AI on rails essentially. So having AI be able to kind of infer, kind of make decisions, but apply that in a deterministic way. And so moving as much of the kind of toil away from people, working in the company, taking action on their behalf, but always having human in the loop, kind of the key decisions being made by humans, and making sure that anything that needs to be deterministic is managed in the back end.
Yeah. And when you kind of think about AI changing your work and your team's work, how do they use, I suppose, eat their own dog food? What are they doing day to day differently than maybe they would have done 3-4 years ago, maybe?
Yeah, like I think it's different in so many dimensions. We have. So like for me, depending on I suppose a leadership or the site leadership perspective of Workday, we've got these great partnerships with the universities. So we've had a number of courses with TU Dublin and now Trinity Business School focused on some of the hard skills like ML, cybersecurity and stuff, which are really never been more important as we're moving into this era. Then with the business school working on kind of entrepreneurial leadership, how do we drive innovation, and then also kind of how do we use AI in to just make the product, kind of build product in a different way. So I think we've got all of that kind of workforce development focus. We've also just got the kind of research partnership with them, so we've got the chair position, so understanding this kind of intersection of technology and society and informing kind of public policy around that, which we think is key for this moment as well. Like we were contributors to the EU AI Act. We think it's a good thing. We need legislation to make sure, and regulation to make sure we do the right stuff. And then internally, like we're lucky, I suppose, in having customers and partnerships with all of the kind of hyperscalers, all of these companies. And so we have access to all of the LLMs, the kind of tooling. And so bringing that to bear internally, having our teams use all of these tools, I think probably more than any time that I've experienced in my career, like this is as much about hands-on experience using the tools in the day-to-day to really understand how you kind of have to approach things differently. I think we're probably starting to see us orientation to kind of smaller teams with, focus on specific small pieces.
Yeah.
I think that dynamics is shifting, away from kind of large, like many Scrum teams working on something to kind of smaller pockets of folks going after pieces at a higher pace.
Because it's kind of incredible what you can do now with the size of the teams and the impact you can have, and how people are wearing different types of roles, where maybe you'd have certain people doing code review, or maybe they're still doing code review, but then you've got people who are actually just having these agents working across different types of tasks. You're managing agents, you've got agents managing agents, you're orchestrating it. So the type of role that you're playing is completely different in one way than what it was years ago. Now, I suppose in software engineering, coding is still just one part of a bigger kind of role, but it's pretty incredible in terms of the amount of AI code that's being written and what that frees up people to actually work on.
Yeah, you're right. I'm seeing our people become more and more T-shaped, as we would have called it historically. Like they need to have a broader set of skills across the kind of the acumen. I think having a business focus has never been more important. Understand, having empathy for our end users, what we're trying to build, what's the right way to present it. Particularly with AI, how is it explainable? Like a whole bunch of that stuff has never been more important. As I think, as we can do more with smaller teams, but making sure we're working on the right stuff, that we can track the value that's attached to it, measure it, that we can build trust and do that responsibly and in an explainable way for our customers. I think like there's a huge shift, and like with all of that, and it's as much cultural inside the teams as anything else.
It blows my mind that only 5% of our listeners actually subscribe to the podcast. We've got one favour to ask. Please, can you subscribe to the podcast? If you like our content, you subscribing will make a huge difference to the guests that we can get on the show, and also be a voice for AI applied across Ireland, but doing it the right way. Now back to the show. You mentioned briefly about the EU AI Act and kind of contributing towards that. What is responsible AI to you and the importance of it, and what does it mean for Workday?
Yeah, like I was chatting to one of my colleagues on this, and like it's just a non-negotiable. I think I don't think we we talk about cybersecurity as something that we add on at the end, right? It's something that we just expect to be built in from the beginning. I think responsible AI is the same way. Like, it just has to be responsible. You know, we have to be confident in the models, that they're not introducing bias, that they're not that they're controlled in a way that they're not going to make bad decisions or have access to make bad decisions. You know, particularly in the business we're in, like, you know, we affect people's livelihoods, payroll, like finance transactions, audit, compliance, all of that stuff. And so, like, there's absolutely no chance that we can't do that in a responsible kind of way. And so we've got a huge focus on that. But, you know, we've got published kind of positions on it. We have a responsible AI, chief responsible AI officer. We publish all our models and training so that, you know, it can be scrutinized and understood. And so we've got high confidence and we're going about it the right way. And so that's why we've been contributors and kind of proactive partners in defining things like the EU IAF, because we want to make sure it does provide protection and that kind of, but balance with the ability to innovate and, you know, drive for business outcomes. Because I think we've seen what's happened when there's been no legislation, and, you know, probably social media is an example of that, where, you know, probably wasn't as positive an impact as it could have been. And then also then probably GDPR, where it was over-regulated. And I think actually through the AI Act, we're starting to see some of that get unwound a bit, and kind of recognition that it probably went a bit too far.
Tell me about some of the leadership lessons you've had recently, because you're spinning a lot of different plates, multiple hats at any one time. Anything kind of come to mind?
Yeah, like, I think, as I said, for me, focusing on what we're driving from a business value perspective has never been more important. Like, I think we have to be able to derive outcomes. We have to be able to measure them. We have to be able to show them in tangible ways. And I think that's never been more important than right now. So I think it's not a new lesson, but it's just a reforming of it. I think having empathy is massively important as well. Like, we are going through a massive shift, and that means, like, roles are changing, like job blends are changing. We have to be kind of deliberate and conscientious in how we do that. And, you know, historically Workday's had a huge focus on early talent. We still do, but we're seeing probably a number of companies back away from that. And, you know, that's not a sustainable model. We need those grads coming through to become the seniors of the future and the architects of the future. Because certainly what I'm seeing is, like, these co-pilots and these tools can help accelerate code and the day-to-day, but in order to make sure that the software is kind of scalable and fit for kind of different markets and performant and all the rest of it, like, we still need kind of senior technical chops kind of looking at it, making sure the architecture is correct, making sure the interactions, the interfaces are correct and all the rest of it. And so I think there's still a ways to go before we replace the whole teams. And I don't know if that's ever going to be true. And so I think we still need a kind of a focus on the early talent, but expecting that the kind of jobs are probably going to shift. And so therefore probably the universities need to kind of move. And again, that's part of our partnership with them.
Yeah, it's funny. I always look at the Stanford Index, and what I kind of see from that is, you see each year AI can do these tasks similar to humans or exceed humans. And kind of job descriptions are full of different tasks. Mm-hmm. And AI can do quite a few tasks, but I'm not necessarily seeing AI just doing the jobs.
No, absolutely not.
But AI doing the task within the job description. And when you do speak to people about that, to say, okay, well, you've currently got your current job description. We can see AI can do some of it. It naturally means you need to evolve, and your job description needs to evolve with the pace that we're in. And when you kind of talk to it like that, and people can see how they can start to feel, then they also feel like they're in that play as well. They're working through. It's frustrating, the narrative where it's like, AI is now going to do your job and you've now got no say in what that's going to be. But how important is upskilling, literacy, and actually bringing people through? You've obviously gone on those leadership workshops yourself. Your people are going on them. How important is it for other companies to start to adopt this and have this type of mindset?
Yeah, as I said, I think it's a moment for it to be quite thoughtful and deliberate about what you're doing and how you're doing it and how you're thinking about that evolution, and, you know, think about what it's going to look like in 2-3 years' time. Because I don't think it's happening right now today, but I don't think it's not going to happen on that timeline. Yeah. And so, you know, it's starting to put in motion now what's going to be needed to have your kind of teams evolve to be in the right place in that time in 3 years is going to be important. I 100% agree with you. I don't see AI in any of our data replacing full jobs. It's replacing parts of jobs, and I think therefore the opportunity is, how do we help those people do much more valuable work with that time that's freed up? That's where the unlock is. It's not about really cost reduction, it's about value added. So yeah, I think every company has the opportunity to leverage that to kind of drive much more value and be innovative. But it's up to them to like understand their context and spend the time thinking about it. And so, yeah, like the benefit of going on some of these training is like you do get to, you know, come up upon the balcony and kind of survey and think about this stuff. And, you know, we're again really lucky having the partnerships that we do, that we get to talk to academics who spend their whole time thinking about this sort of stuff, and, you know, have experts kind of help us kind of rationalize it and think about it.
I was on a personal question, how do you use AI yourself? And I was doing a little bit of gardening, and if anyone knows me, I'm really bad at it. But I was taking pictures of this is before, what could it look like? And it's giving me both kind of before and after to inspire me. The after took quite a bit of work, but it kind of gave me some insights. What other ways do you use it to yourself to be more productive or fun or efficient, or just find yourself being helpful?
Well, I think exactly like that, you know, working through some of my gardening problems, very focused on my lawn, so trying to get rid of scotch grass at the minute, so looking for advice. I think I'm also reaching an age where I'm more and more supplements, it feels like, to, you know, tweak whatever, my sleep and all the rest of it. So it has me on quite a regimen of different things at the minute. So like I think I end up using it many times a day, just asking questions and going back and forth. It's kind of, it's very well tailored to kind of lead you down a rabbit hole of learning more about stuff. And the kids are always asking questions that we put to ChatGPT or whatever's on the phone to kind of get answers. So in my home life, it's all about that. Like in work, it's incredible at kind of getting first drafts of docs out, or, you know, iterating really quickly on stuff that trying to communicate complex ideas, which again has never been more important. I've been actually leveraging AI to kind of help do that. It's been great. So it's a huge accelerant for that sort of stuff. It's never the finished draft, but it does get you the first working copy that you can kind of edit really hard.
It's just great decision support, isn't it? Yeah. I always kind of, my advice to everyone is lead in with personal projects, start to see the value personally, and then everyone start to, from a business perspective, think, okay, this could be really helpful or for work. Or even when you look at the kind of the breakdown of ChatGPT or Anthropic, you see how personalised learning or tutor, just teaching you these different types of things, teach me my tiling, teach how to fix my car, how to do my garden. These different things are really, really good skill to have for literacy. Yeah,
I think in both cases though, like the more you use it, the more it learns about you, the more tailored it is, and the better, you know. So at home it has all my background, but in work it has all my docs and it has my store, like, you know, my Google Drive and all the rest of it. And so it has access to like full corpus of stuff that then when you ask the question, it has this, you know, this base to come from and be very, like, that first draft gets better and better.
You're building that contextual intelligence. And in that context, it makes such a difference when you're actually asking questions as well. Graham, thank you very much for coming into the podcast today and sharing your story about what's happening with the exciting news with Workday.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
At AI Ireland, we're helping over 1 million people become literate using artificial intelligence. And we do this in a variety of different ways. The easiest way is our AI literacy program, where we do a 60 to 90 minute program via virtual Zoom or Microsoft Teams, where we teach the rules of the road of AI, from basic business concepts to ethical and resourceful decisions on how you actually use AI every day. This is our literacy foundation. The second way we use AI training is within our workshops. These are either virtual or in-person workshops where executive leaders come and use some of the AI tools that we make available for them, that they can actually start to take their own documents and reimagine savings of time and energy, but taking away friction from the work that they do each day. Later on, we actually empower different departments, HR, finance, sales, marketing, operations, and start to utilize AI across relevant use cases to upskill their different types of departments. If you're interested and ready to go on your AI journey, we'll be able to showcase over 700 applications of applied AI about how you can actually stop reinventing the wheel and start using AI for your organization today. If you want to start out and find out a little bit about the golden thread of activities that we've got to allow you to start to utilize AI straight away, please feel free to reach out to us and we'll give you a good comprehensive overview about the arts of the possible, minus the hype, purely applied. See you then.